18 years ago, when he turned 65, some began referring to Alex as retired. Not the ones who knew him well. If anything, he worked more. The difference being now he got to choose what was required. He rebuilt his vegetable garden, starting small at first, until after a few seasons, the hilltop by the cove, once overgrown and unloved, through his labor was transformed. Gardens and a cellar nestled in a shady grove. He continued mending fishing gear, and in time became the go-to person when you needed nets and lines repaired. And then there were the lobster pots, each one made from scratch, numbering in the thousands, but all still made with skill and care. Saplings growing across the harbor he cut to make the bows. A boat trip he always made alone on some fine autumn day. And after supper he'd sit on that old chair in the dining room, expert fingers knitting heads in his own traditional, careful way. The laths and other wooden parts were all handmade as well, from strips cut one by one as was his plan. From discarded pallets he'd rescue from one business or another. All in all, Alex Best was a busy, retired fisherman. These days, that work was more important than it had ever been. Earlier that year, his wife Gertie had passed away. After 55 happy years, the void left was immense. Sometimes that sailor felt so alone, adrift, a castaway. But then, in time, as happens to some, that work restored his strength and helped him find and voice an outlet for his pain. And he kept caring for his very much extended family. Bit by bit, Alex became whole and vibrant once again. Boxing Day was approaching fast, and with it a tradition. Family gathering at his house was an expected thing. Alex's children, significant others, their kids, even their kids too, as well as stragglers someone or other figured they'd also bring. There would be lots of healthy stuff, like moose sausage, pizza, and cheesecake. And music. Before long, the voices, guitars, and all would ring. And of course, gifts. Though of modest means, Alex always made a point of each member of that great big clan getting some very special thing. "What can I get Brennan for Christmas?" Alex had asked my wife. Brennan, the only one of my four who chosen life at sea. Named for his departed eldest son, he'd a special place in Alex's heart. So what was it that his gift from Pop this year was going to be? Josephine didn't know what to say. Her dad had a lot of gifts to get. The pension and money made on the side had limits, as she knew. What with keeping his place going, especially the fishing stage and wharf, along with the truck, the heat and light, it was tough just pulling through. Brendan, who, as it happened, was also by the phone, thought on it for a little while and said, "A half-size lobster pot would be so nice for when I am at sea, in my cabin, on a shelf, right above my bed." We whispered back saying, "It's too late for that now. The holidays are only a couple of weeks away. With all the work and stuff he's got to do, it'll never be completed in time for Boxing Day." But Alex had his hearing aid on. At that time, a rare occasion. Those days we all had to shout to ensure our words got through. And after a pause, over the line, his reply came back. "Give me just a bit of time and I'll go see what I can do." The next morning found Alex down in his store, surrounded by the tools for his pot making. He sat quietly for a time on his swivel stool, pondering while a survey he was taking. At length he went back over to his worn workbench, and with his pencil on a piece of plywood traced A brand new jig for making up the smaller pieces he would need, while concentration creased his weather-beaten face. This jig was much smaller than what he normally used, but by lunchtime he had it just completed. He even had several bows turned to the correct shape, a thing for him now easily repeated. The afternoon found him over at the saws, figuring out how to make much smaller lats. It took a few tries before he got it right. What odds? He had a fine stockpile of pallets. In time, he had the shapes that satisfied his needs, so he went ahead and sawed out quite a few. After supper, he figured out patterns for making smaller heads. He took his time, and in the end, he solved that problem too. The following day, he was back down in the store. All the parts he meticulously laid out each in its place. It was colder today, so he went and lit the wood stove up, letting its fragrant heat hold him within its warm embrace. He buckled down and went to work fabricating the very special handmade Christmas present. Not that Alex really minded. He could adapt to anything. Still, he found this work not at all unpleasant. It was just an issue of scale, and soon, with skill, Alex's worn and calloused hands began to move, as the repetition led him to a whole new rhythm, and he adjusted to this slightly different groove. Time passed. Alex took no notice of it now, and decided it felt right to build some more. His thoughts turned inward to his precious years with Gertie as the smoke rose from the chimney of his store. Outside, the evening dusk it deepened, and the smoke from the wood stove lazily wound its way upwards, and with it went Alex's thoughts of Gertie. And oh yeah, the gift was ready, along with others, in time for Boxing Day.